Hello, my friends. Welcome back to our little corner of quiet reflection. If you're joining us for the first time, I'm glad you're here. Each week, we look through the lens of Stoicism to see how its ancient wisdom still matters, especially here in modern American life that can feel too fast, too loud, too insistent. If you find value in this conversation, I invite you to like this video, subscribe, and share it. Not for numbers, but so we can continue to build this small but steady community of wisdom seekers who prefer depth over noise. Now let me take you into a very American scene. It's Thanksgiving dinner in suburban New Jersey. The table is long, crowded with turkey stuffing bowls of potatoes. 3 generations sit together, but the air isn't warm, it's tense. Politics have found their way into the conversation. Someone raises their voice. Another interrupts. Words tumble over one another like storm waves. Everyone wants to be heard, no one is really listening. At the end of the table, an older man sits quietly. He carves his slice of turkey, pours a bit of gravy, and watches. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't jump in. And slowly, without realizing it, the others start glancing his way. When he finally speaks just one sentence measured calm, the table quiets. His words carry more weight than all the shouting that came before. That man practiced the art the Stoics praised the discipline of saying less. Seneca once warned most men when they speak merely talk, but the wise man speaks as if he were weighing gold. He understood that speech is power, and like any power, it weakens when wasted. Think about it. In America today, people fill every silence with chatter. Cable news runs 24 hours even when there is nothing new to report. Social media encourages us to post every stray thought, every irritation, every moment. We are a nation drowning in words, yet starving for meaning. The Stoics remind us silence is not emptiness. Silence is strength. I remember visiting a community center in Texas. A group of retirees gathered every Wednesday to debate politics, sports, and everything in between. Most of them spoke over one another, voices rising, hands waving. But there was one man, Jim, who rarely said anything. He would sip his coffee, smile faintly, and let the storm pass. When he finally spoke, maybe once or twice the entire hour, the room quieted. Not because he shouted, but because everyone wanted to hear what he thought. His restraint gave his words gravity. Epictetus wrote, "Let silence be your general rule, or say only what is necessary and in few words." Words are like coins. If you spend them carelessly, they lose value. If you spend them wisely, they become wealth. But why do we overtalk? Why do we flood the air with words? I think at its core it is fear. Fear of silence. Fear that if we don't speak, we won't be noticed. In America, silence is often mistaken for weakness. The loudest voice in the room seems to have the most power. But is that truly power or just noise dressed up as authority? Let me share a story. A woman named Teresa from Florida once confessed to me, "I used to call my daughter 3 times a day, filling her ear with every worry." She started ignoring my calls. At first, I felt hurt. Then I realized I was talking to her to calm myself, not to help her. When I learned to hold back to write down my worries instead, she started calling me again. Our conversations became shorter but sweeter. By saying less, she saved her relationship. And this lesson applies everywhere at the dinner table, at work, even in our own minds. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "Stop talking about what a good man is, be one." In other words, less speech, more action. Imagine how different life might look if we spoke less about what we plan to do and spent more energy doing it. George, a high school football coach in Ohio, discovered this late in his career. At first, he was the loud shouting type, barking at his players constantly. But over time, he realized the shouting wore him out, and it didn't make his players better. So he tried a new approach, fewer words, spoken only when necessary. It was like magic, he told me. Suddenly, when I did speak, they listened. They ran harder, played better. My silence became my authority. That's Stoicism on the field. Words lose power when overused. Silence gives them edge. And it's not just about relationships with others, it's about our relationship with ourselves. Many of us carry an endless inner monologue justifying, complaining, explaining. The Stoics would tell us this chatter is a trap. The discipline of saying less applies within as well as without. I once spoke with Diane, a widow in her 60s. After her husband passed, she began posting constantly on Facebook about her grief. It felt good at first, she said, but eventually I realized I was feeding the wound instead of healing it. I was talking about my pain instead of facing it. She began journaling privately instead. Her words became medicine instead of performance. Silence, she told me, was where I started to get strong again. That's Stoic wisdom for the digital age. Not every thought deserves an audience. Silence is not a void. It is a container, a vessel that allows meaning to settle and grow. In Japan, there is a concept called ma, the pause between sounds, the space that gives music its rhythm. Without silence, even the most beautiful symphony would collapse into noise. Stoicism teaches us the same lesson for speech. Without restraint, words collapse into babble. I met a man in Chicago who had been married for 40 years. He told me half-jokingly, "The secret is that I don't say everything I think, especially not the first thought." He explained how in the early years of his marriage he often argued with his wife, quick to correct or criticize. But as he grew older, he realized that not every thought deserved to be spoken. Most of the time when I held my tongue, the problem solved itself. My silence saved us hours of pointless fights. This echoes what Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations. You always own the option of having no opinion. In our world today, where everyone has a hot take, choosing no opinion can feel radical. But it is precisely that choice which protects peace. Consider the workplace. In many American offices, meetings drag on not because there is too little to say, but because there is too much. People repeat themselves trying to sound important, but the colleague who speaks only when needed often becomes the most respected. I remember a nurse I worked with during a hospital visit in Boston. She was quiet, almost invisible during staff meetings. But when a real crisis came, a patient crashing alarms ringing, she gave clear, concise instructions. People followed her instantly. She didn't need to shout. Her silence beforehand had built trust in her words. The discipline of saying less is also about energy. Talking constantly drains us. Listening, observing, waiting, these restore us. The Stoics prized self-control, and words are one of the first and best places to practice it. Seneca wrote, "As often as you can keep silence, speak only when compelled, and then only what is necessary." It's a discipline, and like all disciplines, it feels hard at first, but frees us later. Think of the times when silence protected you. A job interview where you paused instead of rambling. A tense argument where you chose not to add fuel. A friendship where you listened instead of giving advice. In each case, silence held more power than words. But silence isn't only about others. It's also about mastering the storm inside. Take the story of Miguel, a veteran from California. After serving overseas, he struggled with anger and restlessness. He talked constantly trying to explain himself to justify the process. But his therapist suggested a Stoic exercise: spend 1 hour a day in silence. No phone, no TV, no speaking. Just sit, breathe, and let thoughts rise and fall without responding. At first it was torture, Miguel admitted, but after a month I noticed something. My mind calmed down. I didn't need to tell my story to everyone anymore. I carried peace inside me. That is the power of disciplined silence. It is not repression. It is not weakness. It is choosing when and how to use words so they heal instead of harm. We often forget that silence communicates too. A pause can express respect. A look can express love. A quiet withdrawal can express disapproval louder than shouting. Stoicism urges us to remember that actions and silences are often clearer than speeches. Think back to that Thanksgiving table in New Jersey. The old man's silence wasn't passive. It was active, watchful, deliberate. When he finally spoke, his words mattered because he had first chosen restraint. The world today rewards the fast talker, the influencer, the endless commentator, but life respects the one who listens, waits, and speaks with care. That is the Stoic way, and it is desperately needed in a culture of noise. So ask yourself, where in your life could you say less and mean more? The Stoics believed that every discipline of body, of mind, of speech was a training ground for freedom. When you master your words, you master your presence in the world. You no longer spill yourself in every conversation. You no longer give away your peace for the illusion of being heard. You speak less, but you live more. I think of Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, sitting in his tent during war, writing in his journal. He ruled millions, commanded armies, yet in his private writings he practiced restraint. He wrote not to impress, but to clarify his own soul. That is the discipline of saying less, speaking only what shapes you toward virtue. And I think of us today in America. The constant scrolling, the podcasts, the talking heads, the texts buzzing at midnight. We are not starving for words, we are drowning in them. What we lack is silence, and with it meaning. So let us imagine another scene. You are at a family dinner. Voices rise as they always do. You feel the impulse to jump in, to correct, to argue. But instead, you take a breath. You stay silent. You listen. And maybe when you do speak, it is only one sentence. Calm, clear, honest. And in that moment, your words weigh more than all the noise. Or picture yourself at work. The meeting drags everyone talking in circles. You hold your silence until the right moment. Then you speak briefly, with clarity, and the room shifts. People hear you, not because you shouted, but because you chose your words as a craftsman chooses tools carefully, sparingly. This is the discipline, this is the art. Seneca urged speech is the index of the mind. Speak that you may be known, but speak only so much that you may be known wisely. My friends, I want to leave you with this. The discipline of saying less is not about muting your life. It's about amplifying your presence. It's about choosing words that carry weight because they are rare, deliberate, earned. So ask yourself, what is one place in your life, maybe at home, maybe online, maybe inside your own thoughts, where silence could serve you better than speech? Where could you trade noise for depth? Remember, words may win attention, but silence earns respect. Thank you for sharing this time with me. If today's reflection stirred something in you, please like, subscribe, and share this video. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments. When was the last time silence spoke louder than your words? Because the art of saying less is not about shrinking your life. It's about enlarging your presence. Until next time, may your words be few but golden, your silences steady, and your life marked by depth instead of noise.